Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another interview. Today, my guest is Miguel Manalo. Miguel reached out to me through I Hear You on Facebook, and he shared with me a video in which he describes with honesty and rawness what it was like to grow up with a schizophrenic mum. Miguel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi Sandra. I'm so happy we're doing this.
I know I am too. You know, your video has 5,500 views.
Wow, yeah, I remember when you told me that. Like the number of views hasn't been something I've been thinking about. But yeah, hearing someone else say it, it's like, wow, that's a lot of people.
I'm going to start the interview with a quote from the video. You
Okay.
said, I was made to carry adult sized responsibilities for too long, too young. A child cannot be in charge of an undiagnosed woman descending into madness. You grew up with carrying a lot of responsibility and you saw a lot of things children really shouldn't be exposed to. How do you think this impacted your development and ultimately your adulthood?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm thinking about what I'm learning in group therapy now, where how it impacted my development was having to have all these responsibilities means I didn't have a real safe parent there who was supposed to be doing that stuff. I didn't have a safe parent there being like, "No, no, that this is adult stuff. Thank you for trying. You're so good for trying, but only adults can handle this." So, I think not having somebody there telling me what what is and isn't appropriate for me to be trying,
Right.
I think that just puts in a lot of like perfectionism in me. I get frustrated really easily when things don't come easily. I'm thinking back to high school and college, so much frustration there. But yeah, just not having someone to be like, these are kid sized things that you should be taking on. It makes me feel like, the patterns I'm trying to learn are now. It's like, yeah, am I picking up too much now? I feel like inside me is always like, oh yeah, just pick up more responsibilities. The more I do, the better my life is going to be, instead of being like, it's okay to take smaller bites.
That's when you realize that that's ingrained in your mind, the way that you think you should be in the world, which is taking on more responsibilities. And I'm pretty sure you're like me in the sense that we're natural leaders because you kind of
Yeah.
you were thrust into that. And that isn't necessarily a good thing all the time, because it's like you say, being able to step back and relax and say, okay, that really doesn't correspond with me right now. I shouldn't be the one taking on all of these responsibilities or all of these extra things. But when you think back to your childhood, there wasn't a choice.
No. No. Again, how it's framed with the therapy I've been doing, it's I'm grateful for the skill now to be like, I'm good at being a leader, or
Mm.
like when it's kind of chaotic, I'm good at, like, I don't know, focusing in and like staying calm under that kind of pressure. But little Miguel had to like go through a lot to learn that. Like I'm glad I have it now, but I wish he didn't have to learn it that way. And yeah, I feel the same. Like we're both like, I feel such a kindred spirit in you. Who else is out there trying to tell their story, trying to find others who want to
Right.
tell their story, because you know how lonely it is.
So
And yeah, I also suffer from like, oh yeah, okay, it's time to like put the tools down, let somebody else do some stuff for a while. And I think it's a sign of my healing that I'm like, man, where are the people who are like me? Because I want to be like, yeah, I can do this, but you know what? Adult Miguel, he deserves a break. I'm happy to like be a follower for a little bit.
right.
But I feel like I can only do that when I know the other person, and like, whatever sixth sense I've got, I can be like, okay, yeah, they've got it. They're competent. If I feel like, they don't really got it, then like I feel that in me where it's like, okay, I have to like get up and help also, you know?
Right, right. And that's why I also mentioned the 5,500 views of your video, because it's an indicator for me that there are so many of us out there looking for information, looking for other people who have gone through this and can see themselves through other people, their references. That's what happened when I read The Memory Palace by Mira Bartok. It was the first book I ever read where I could see myself, also the daughter of a schizophrenic mom. And I felt the sadness in her pages, and it just really impacted me. So when I interviewed her, it was a dream come true. She laughed because I was fanning out during the interview, but I controlled myself. And at the end, I said, oh, I'm going to tell you something. This is a dream come true for me. And she said, oh, you dream very small dreams. And I said, no, you have no idea just how deeply profound it was for me to find somebody's story that was like mine, because I had never
Yeah.
seen anything, heard anything, read a memoir where we could change the names and that could easily have been me, right? So there's a huge need in all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling you yesterday, I attended one of those NAMI, the National, I forget what it is, National Association for
The
Mental
mental
Illness,
illness.
National Alliance. Yeah. And I attended one of their family members of those
Mm.
with mental illness. And it was my first time there, so I introduced myself talking about a lot of stuff I talk about in the video, what I'm doing today. And someone was like, "Oh, have you tried adult children of alcoholics?" And I had to be like, "Yeah, and I do relate with those people, not having a safe parent, also growing up in chaos. But I haven't been going lately because I didn't find anyone else with a similar story to mine." In finishing Laura M. Flynn's memoir, Swallow the Ocean, yeah, I felt the same sort of thing where it's like they described like a tense dinner scene between her mother and her father, and just descriptions of her mom like looking off into the distance, or like her body tensing up sort of out of nowhere. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
I remember those details.
yeah,
but but yeah, just finding someone where even the details match up. I think part of me, looking for you and looking for these memoirs now, it's like, how does my group therapist put it? It's like gaining some selfishness in my life, where I feel like growing up and today, it's always been like a lot of half measures of like, oh, it isn't exactly what I wanted, but like I'll make do, I'll make my way forward. Life's not perfect. But I think as I've been healing somewhat, like I'm learning to be selfish, and part of my selfishness is like I don't want to settle for other children who have alcoholic parents, narcissistic parents, drug addicted parents. I'm gonna find other people who can really resonate with my story. And I don't know, I feel so lucky that we met, and I found people where
yeah,
like you were saying with the Memory Palace author, that yeah, just that connection, it's so like thirst quenching, like
right.
looking for a glass of water for forever, and it's like, ah, you know
Yes. And you know what I've found, I think for me, the word that really sums it up is the validation. There's a validation
yeah,
in meeting you and meeting Alexandra Hewitt and Dr. Margaret Brown and Mira Bartok, because when you grow up in this situation and you're so isolated,
yeah,
you feel that there's nobody that can understand you. And so when you are able to talk about these things, and like we mentioned last week, I mean, we went pretty deep fast in our
yeah,
conversation because there
yeah,
was a mutual understanding, and there's not a shame in admitting, oh, my mum was this way, or my mum used to talk alone, and she was, these weird things that other people don't understand. And even now, you mentioned the dinner scene in that memoir, and I was like, oh my God, yes, because I would see in my mum, she would be okay. And then all of a sudden her eyes would just glaze over and
Yeah.
she would tense up. And that would make everybody be on edge. Simple things like that. So I think part of how you're feeling in not, and it's not to say, oh, there aren't overlapping things. Of course, there are overlapping factors that we all share, because in the end, it's a traumatic childhood. But it's when you come down to the details, only somebody who has lived with a schizophrenic parent can understand. And more so when it's a mum, because the
Mm.
mother is the principal guardian of the children. Generally, the father is the one that goes out and works. And so when it's the mum, it completely destabilizes the home. So
Yeah.
being able to talk about this with somebody who understands, I think validates little Miguel and teenager Miguel and Miguel today and me as well. I think that is the right word for me. It's validation for everything that I went through.
Oh, 100%. And like feeling so lucky at finding people who want to talk about it. I feel like I've run into people trying to talk about growing up, and maybe they have different stories, and like maybe you've run into it too, that there's a resistance with them. So feeling grateful that I found people who are like, no, I've done my own inner work. I have a lot of work ahead of me, but like I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready to share. And like knowing that in community, in talking about it with others who get it, like there's like a next level of healing that can come. Because yeah, because of that validation of like, okay, yeah, it's these experiences, they're not unique to me, with how like scary they are. And like growing up as a teenager, I'd be like, no, I gotta like memory hole that. I gotta shove it in the back of my head, stop thinking about it. And they're still painful to think about, but knowing that like other people understand,
Yeah.
it's so healing. It's so validating.
Miguel, your mum depended on you because you were the oldest child, and you had to make decisions that you hoped wouldn't side you with the voices, because if you did, then you would be betraying your mum. As a child, how could you have known that rationalizing with your mum was a lost battle? I mean, how could you have
Yeah.
known?
Yeah. Who was there to say that like I remember my mom's one of 10, she still lives here, and a lot of her siblings still here. I remember them growing up. When we'd leave, they'd be like, hey, Meg, your mom's sick, okay? And like, you take care of your sister, you take care of her. But like, we'd still be sent home with her to drive the car home. And like, I needed them to be like, hey, sit down, be like, hey, what's it like at home? What's going on? I don't have any memories of like, no, what she's saying isn't true. As a kid, your parents are your whole world. You look to them for like, how do I learn to tie my shoes? How do I learn to cook? How do I navigate, the world? So like everything they say, how can it not be just, oh, that's how the world is? So not having someone there to be like, you're trying so hard, you're aiming for a target that doesn't exist, because the voices aren't, they're not there, and they're not true. And it's like someone needed to be there to be like, it's not real. But you know nobody nobody was.
Right.
Yeah.
I found a video which I shared on Facebook. There's therapy that's taking place now for children and teens, in which they explain symptoms, and where they have a space where they can actually say, well, this is happening at home. And they ask the child, well, how does that make you feel? And the first instance is, well, I feel sad, but then they really give the child the opportunity to express themselves however that may be and whatever they might say. But there's a venting process that happens instead of you going home as a child where you haven't even formed your own way of thinking or anything. That's where parents are supposed to come in and really guide you. And you're faced with a situation in which you've had to step up. You're actually now the mum, or you were your mum's guardian, really. You've had to step up, and so you're processing all of these weird behaviors. Your mum talking on her own, and maybe yelling. My mum, this is pretty terrible, but she would hit herself because she would have physical hallucinations where she would feel beneath her skin crawling of insects and things like that, and it was just really scary to watch. So a lot of what my mum would say, there was no logic behind it, and really no logic for a child, much less for a child. For example, I smell lavender in the garden. Can you smell that? And I'm like, I can't. I must have been about 9 years old. No, I can smell the lavender, and I need you to tell me that it's there. So how do you rationalize with that? You
Yeah.
can't. And as a
Yeah.
child, it just creates so much confusion, and it also creates this anxiety pit in the bottom of your tummy that just never goes away. It never goes away.
No, because you just want your mom to be happy. It's like, oh, if I say yes, I smell it, then she'll stop asking, and it'll be over and she'll feel fine. And like, I just want my mom to feel fine, you know?
Right.
Just having all that responsibility. And like, I have a younger sister and just making sure she's okay. And a lot, I feel really embarrassed talking about this. I don't remember if I talked about this in the video, but in Filipino culture, there's a lot of like people who have live-in housekeepers who do like cooking and cleaning. It's very common in the Philippines because labor is so cheap, and there's a lot. And a lot of families do that over here. They bring someone over so that they can live here in the States. So we had one, and she was like the safe, sane person, but she was also like the target of mom being angry. And so also felt like I can't protect her either. She was just taking care of us and helping out, and mom's just like getting angry at her and everything and mistreating her. So yeah, it just feels like I can't do anything right because
Right.
for everything that like mom said thank you to where I was helping her out, it's like she's exploding at something at nothing, and like how can I feel anything but, oh, I could have done something, I just didn't see XYZ. If I'd seen XYZ, maybe mom wouldn't be shouting and angry right now.
Right. And as a child, you carry that weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember I asked Mira Bartok if she felt guilty or felt responsible for her mum's illness when she was a child. And she told me, if I recollect well, I think she said no. And I always struggled with that. I always thought it was my fault. And it's so sad to think of me as a child thinking that I was responsible for that. But when you're a child, if you think back to things like my father would say, don't eat the seeds from the watermelon, because otherwise a tree will grow in your tummy. And I believed that. So when you're a
Yeah.
child, I mean, you kind of live between reality and like a fantasy world anyway, because you're a kid and you're still kind of innocent. Then the innocence is lost, and then this bizarre dynamic is happening at home, and it's too much for a child to carry, and yet we all did, and we all
Yeah.
got through. I mean, you get through with all of your traumas and with everything that this home situation entails. You get through, but then there's the other part of how are you healing, because we carry and we drag things well into our adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about what you said. Yeah, believing, oh, if you swallow the seeds, yeah, watermelons are gonna grow inside you. Cause yeah, as a kid, you don't know. It could be true.
Yeah.
It's the world. Anything's possible. And yeah, just needing somebody to tell you, what's what. But yeah, today it's just I don't know. In the past, I thought, oh yeah, be self-sufficient, Miguel. Wake up at 4:30, go running, and then go to the gym and like have a really regimented schedule and everything. And like when you've got a six pack and you look great, you'll have friends, and then I'll have a cool girlfriend. And yeah, really just that self-sufficiency. It feels like I know now after so much work that's just little Miguel trying to like, oh, gotta be perfect and do all the perfect things, and then I'll have the perfect outcome and everything. But now I feel like it's in community. It's in like the childhood trauma group therapy I'm doing where like I get to give support, I get support, and even though in my group I'm the only one with like a schizophrenic parent, it's still healing in that way where it's like, okay, here's other people who are also adults and they're trying to heal. And I feel like the biggest part of healing today is just yeah, learning to like listen to little Miguel and like give adult Miguel a break when things aren't perfect and like take things slowly and like not jump to the next thing. It's very hard to learn. I'm not working right now, and like I feel like, man, I have to be perfect so that I can like nail the first interview and then I'll get a job and then it'll be over with. It's not how it's gonna go. It's little bits, little you know, picking away at it slowly over time. But yeah, just learning to like listen to little Miguel feels like the most healing thing, and like letting him know that I'm listening and that he's important, and yeah, and that his feelings are valid. It's not easy to do. It's hard being the parent that I should have had, but I know it's what's got to get done.